It was a particularly crisp afternoon in London, the kind where the fog hung low over Baker Street, curling around gas lamps like spectral fingers. Holmes sat in his armchair, feet upon the fender, eyes narrowed as though staring not at the room but through it. I could sense, even before he spoke, that the stillness of our sitting room was merely a prelude to some intellectual tempest.
Watson, the day is ripe for investigation. I feel a disturbance in the ordinary rhythm of our city, a subtle discord which hints at a concealed mystery. Observe, if you will, the pattern of footsteps outside the window. They are uneven, betraying hesitation and purpose in equal measure.
I followed his gaze to the street, noting the rare pedestrian passing along the wet cobbles, their boots splashing in the shallow puddles left by last night's rain. It was remarkable, I mused, how Holmes could extract significance from such banal sights. You see the ordinary, Holmes, and extract the extraordinary, I commented, almost in awe.
Precisely, Watson. Most men look and see nothing. But the observant mind notices the minutiae, the scuff of a shoe, the worn edge of a glove, the faint smell of cigar smoke lingering in the air. Each detail, insignificant in isolation, forms a mosaic of truth when properly interpreted.
My companion leaned forward, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, and for a moment he resembled an oracle awaiting a revelation. Holmes, what is it this time? Another disappearance, a curious theft, or something altogether unprecedented? I asked, trying to keep the anticipation from my voice, though my heart beat faster with the promise of adventure.
Ah, it is, Watson. The a matter that has already reached my ears by means less conventional than the morning papers. The case concerns Mr. Eganwood, who Kimbard Trusters Nadra and Cyril Overton, a young athlete of exceptional talent who has inexplicably vanished just prior to an important rugby match. The problem is, of course, that no note has been left and no trace of his movements can be discerned.
I had heard of Overton. His prowess on the rugby field was spoken of in hushed admiration by my aqua in dances. The idea of a man of such discipline disappearing without a whisper struck me with curiosity and gone. Cern alike. Holmes, surely this is more than a simple disappearance. There must be something hidden in plain sight, I remarked, eager to apply the reasoning I had learned from my mentor over these many months.
Indeed, Watson. And it is precisely that, hidden in plain sight, which forms the nucleus of deduction. Consider, if you will, the habits of Mr. Overton. He was punctual, meticulous, and devoted to his sport. A man of regularity does not vanish without compelling cause. Thus, our task is to uncover that cause, for the ordinary clues will not suffice.
Holmes's words, as always, awakened in me a mixture of admiration and frustration. I admired the clarity of his logic, yet I felt the impatience of one who wished to reach conclusions without the discipline of patient observation. Shall we then visit his lodgings at once, Holmes, and begin our inquiries in earnest? I asked, reaching for my coat.
Yes, Watson. But note, well, the act of observation is superior to hasty intrusion. We must prepare ourselves mentally as well as physically. There is a rhythm to deduction, much like a dance, where one misstep can render the entire performance meaningless. Once we enter Mr. Overton's rooms, we shall scrutinize every item, every fold of fabric, every speck of dust for indications of intent or disturbance.
I followed Holmes through the familiar streets, the fog growing thicker with each step, curling around our legs, shrouding the city in muted grey. Holmes, I ventured, do you suspect foul play? Or is this a case of a young man fleeing from some private burden?
Foul play, Watson, is always the initial hypothesis, yet one must remain flexible. A man might disappear for reasons mundane, ignoble, or entirely personal. The question is not what is probable, but what is demonstrable through the evidence. And the evidence is rarely verbal. It lies in footprints, ink stains, the arrangement of objects, even the faint odor of tobacco or aftershave.
By the time we reached Mr. Overton's lodgings, a modest but well-kept room on the upper floors of a quiet street, I felt my anticipation surge. Holmes rapped lightly upon the door, which was answered by a concerned-looking landlady.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, you have come about Mr. Overton. He has not returned since last evening, and I'm quite beside myself with worry. His things are all in order, but he simply did not appear for supper.
Calm yourself, madam. We shall examine the premises and ascertain whether Mr. Overton's absence is cause for alarm. Tell us, when did you last see him, and did you note any unusual visitors or disturbances in the building?
I last saw him in the late afternoon. No visitors, and nothing seemed amiss, except that he received a letter which he read in great agitation. But he would not tell me the contents, and I feared to pry.
Holmes's eyes gleamed with interest, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. A letter, Watson? Note how the simplest artifact, a single piece of paper, can precipitate the disappearance of a young man. It is often the smallest, seemingly trivial communication that propels men into extraordinary action.
May I see this letter, madam? Even a glance, without reading, may allow us to deduce its nature.
I'm not sure. He always demanded privacy, but it is here, on his desk, unopened, perhaps forgotten, in his haste to depart.
Excellent. Leave it there. We shall examine it carefully, with the appropriate caution and discretion. Watson, observe the envelope, note the stamp, the handwriting, the orientation. Every detail will contribute to the larger picture.
I bent over the envelope, noting the elegant, almost flamboyant script, the seal faintly embossed with a crest I did not recognize. Holmes lifted it delicately, turning it in his fingers as a jeweler would a gem.
See, Watson, how even the angle of the fold can betray the temperament of the writer. The pressure here indicates a firm hand. The hurried crease suggests impatience or urgency. The envelope has traveled some distance, likely by carriage or post, over a route which left faint traces of mud and carriage oil, elementary, yet revealing.
I marveled at his attention to minutiae, realizing that every small observation Holmes made was a thread in a tapestry which would eventually reveal the whole narrative. Holmes, how do you reconstruct so much from so little? I asked, genuinely perplexed.
Watson, it is not reconstruction but interpretation. The world leaves clues in abundance. It is only a question of seeing them with clarity, of discerning what is meaningful from what is trivial. As I have often said, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
With Holmes examining the letter, I turned my attention to the room itself. It was tidy, orderly, everything in its place, except for one detail easily overlooked, a pair of mud-stained boots neatly placed by the doorway, yet showing a pattern of wear inconsistent with normal use. I pointed them out to Holmes.
Ah, Watson, excellent observation. Notice the scuff upon the right heel and the faint abrasion near the arch. The boots have traversed gravel paths, perhaps hurriedly, and have recently been polished. The owner is not accustomed to long walks on uneven terrain, yet he was compelled to do so. Note also the faint residue of a dark, greasy substance, likely from a carriage wheel or machinery. The implications are most intriguing.
As I observed Holmes noting these clues with meticulous care, I felt both exhilaration and frustration. Exhilaration at the thrill of discovery, and frustration at my own inability to see as he did. The letter, the boots, the faint traces of mud, each seemed mundane until Holmes revealed the story they told.
Watson, I suspect that Mr. Overton has not merely disappeared by whim, but under compulsion, prompted by external forces. Our task is to determine the nature of those forces. The simplest avenue, as always, is to consider motive. Who benefits from the absence of this young athlete and why? Once we identify that, the remainder will unfold with precision.
And so, the first threads of the mystery began to intertwine before us. A vanished young man, a cryptic letter, mud-stained boots, and the unspoken tension that lingered in the air. As Holmes meticulously recorded his observations in his notebook, I felt the familiar surge of anticipation that heralded the beginning of an adventure unlike any I had yet encountered. The following morning dawned grey and damp, the city wrapped in a persistent drizzle that rendered the streets slick and reflective. Holmes and I left Baker Street promptly. Our destination, the Athletic Club, where Mr. Overton trained, and where his disappearance had first caused alarm. The air carried a faint tang of coal smoke, and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carriages underscored the ceaseless rhythm of London life, oblivious to the quiet drama unfolding in its midst.
Observe, Watson, how even the ordinary activity of the streets provides a map of human behavior. The carriage tracks, the alignment of discarded papers, the angle of wet footprints, all are indicators of recent passage. Our first objective is to identify the last known movements of Mr. Overton. Only then can we determine whether his disappearance was voluntary or coerced.
We arrived at the club, a venerable institution with polished wooden floors and walls adorned with portraits of athletic legends. The members, clad in dark flannels and polished boots, paused to regard Holmes with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. His reputation, even here among sportsmen, preceded him.
Good morning, gentlemen. I am investigating the absence of Mr. Cyril Overton. I would be obliged if you would provide any information regarding his movements yesterday, no matter how trivial it may appear. Small details are often the harbingers of truth.
Mr. Holmes, we have been quite concerned. Mr. Bitch cried Overton attended practice in the afternoon, but he left abruptly. No one saw him enter any public transport, and the changing room shows no sign of him lingering. He did, however, receive a visitor just before departure, a man in a dark coat, tall, with a distinctly aristocratic bearing.
Holmes raised an eyebrow at the description, his fingers drumming the armrest with an impatient rhythm. An aristocratic visitor, Watson. Note the specificity of his features, the cut of his coat, the posture, the scent one could detect in proximity. Each element forms a constellation of data.
Did anyone observe any conversation, gestures, or perhaps the exchange of an item between Mr. Overton and this gentleman? Even the smallest object may prove pivotal in reconstructing the sequence of events.
I cannot say for certain, Mr. Holmes. The visitor arrived quietly and departed just as discreetly. However, the cleaning staff noted a folded piece of paper left behind, as though forgotten or intentionally discarded. It is now in my possession.
Excellent. Watson, let us examine the paper. Even in absence of content, the handwriting, fold, and placement can reveal the writer's temperament and urgency. Observe the faint grease stains, likely from a carriage or luggage, and the slight crumple indicating nervousness or haste.
Holmes unfolded the note with precision, almost reverently, and scanned its contents with rapid eyes. Watson, even the ink speaks. The pressure varies along each stroke, suggesting indecision, perhaps a moment of doubt. The message itself is concise, yet hints at a meeting and a sense of urgency. Remarkable how a few lines of text can convey more than the most elaborate conversation.
We must visit the location mentioned in this note immediately. Watson, gather your coat and ensure your notebook is ready. This adventure requires rapid observation and careful documentation. Do not allow the anxiety of anticipation to obscure your perception.
Outside, the drizzle had intensified, creating tiny rivulets along the curbstones. Chingant. I followed Holmes in near silence, save for the occasional comment on the city's rhythm or the curious alignment of footprints. Holmes, I ventured, do you anticipate danger, or is this merely a matter of recovery and questioning?
Danger is always a factor, Watson. Yet it is secondary to comprehension. We are not rash adventurers. We are detectives pursuing knowledge and the restoration of equilibrium. But I confess there is a possibility that Mr. Overton's disappearance intersects with motives more complex than personal whim. Observe the signs along the street. Even the placement of waste and the faint residue of mud offers clues.
Destination, a narrow back street lined with warehouses, exuded an air of secrecy. The sign above the door bore the faded letters H and Co., and the windows were dark, revealing nothing of the interior. Holmes paused, crouching slightly to examine the doorstep.
Note the scuff marks here, Watson. They are not from ordinary shoes. They suggest a struggle or hurried removal of boots. Furthermore, the faint residue of mud corresponds precisely with the pattern we observed on Overton's own footwear. This is no coincidence. Come.
We entered cautiously, our footsteps muffled by the thick matting. The interior was dimly lit, and the air carried the faint scent of paper and dust. Immediately, Holmes's eyes scanned the room, noting every detail. A chair slightly askew, a ledger lying open, and a single coat hung near the door, the fabric bearing traces of mud and carriage grease.
Watson, observe the position of the chair in relation to the ledger. It indicates that someone left in haste, perhaps expecting to return shortly. The coat, too, is telling. Its placement suggests an attempt to mask urgency with casual indifference. And see here, the faint scent lavender mixed with tobacco, lightly transferred from the visitor to Mr. A. Overton during their brief encounter.
My heart pounded as Holmes continued his silent investigation, cataloging minutiae with the precision of a surgeon. The ledger contained entries in a hand I did not recognize, detailing deliveries and schedules, but interspersed were coded abbreviations and numbers which suggested something more clandestine.
Indeed, Watson, the ledger is both shield and signal. To the untrained eye, it is mere record keeping. To the observant, it is a map of movements, possibly of people or items of value. Our task is to decode its patterns. Notice how certain entries are aligned differently, perhaps marking days of particular significance.
As Holmes spoke, a faint noise reached our ears, a soft, almost imperceptible shuffle, followed by a whispered exclamation. Holmes signaled me to remain silent, and together we crept toward the source, a shadowed corner near the staircase. There, partially concealed, we found a young man, trembling yet unmistakably, Mr. Overton.
Cyril Overton, you are safe for the present, but we must speak quickly. Tell me, what compelled your sudden disappearance? Speak freely, for concealment will serve you no purpose under observation such as mine.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I was compelled to leave. A letter arrived demanding my immediate presence at this location. It threatened consequences if I failed to comply. I feared both my reputation and my safety, and I could think of no recourse but to obey.
Holmes listened intently, his gaze never leaving Overton's face. Note, Watson, he whispered, how the language of fear manifests not only in words, but in posture, micro-expressions, and even in the uneven tone of speech. Every detail reinforces the narrative. Now go!
Watson, the critical question remains, who sent this letter and why? Overton, you must recall any distinguishing features, any hint of the sender's identity, for such information will allow us to trace the chain of causation.
Nay, I could not see the sender clearly. The letter was delivered anonymously, slipped under my door late last night. But there was a faint scent, a floral note I recognized from the athletic club. It is the same scent that lingered on the visitor yesterday.
Excellent, excellent. The scent is a key clue, Watson, for it links two events otherwise disparate, and the urgency of the letter, combined with its precision in delivery, indicates a sender both careful and determined.
Holmes's mind worked visibly, cataloging and correlating each piece of evidence as though arranging a complex jigsaw puzzle. I could see the faint furrow of concentration, the rapid motion of his eyes from Overton to the ledger, then to the doorway, mapping every possible trajectory and motive.
Watson, we now possess the framework of the mystery, a coerced athlete, an anonymous letter, a cryptic visitor, and a ledger filled with coded movements. Our next task is to determine motive. Who benefits from Overton's absence, and what will they gain from manipulation of his movements? Only through identifying the force behind these actions can we resolve the case.
As we left the building, guiding an anxious but unharmed Overton, I reflected on the subtle interplay of fear, secrecy, and deduction that had brought us to this moment. Holmes walked beside me, silent but alert, the very image of contemplative purpose. London, for all its fog and noise, seemed to pause for a brief instant, granting us a fleeting clarity in the midst of its vast, unknowable sprawl. The day had grown noticeably colder, the London fog now a dense shroud, curling through the alleys and choking the sunlight. Holmes and I escorted Mr. Overton back to his lodgings, yet the young man's mind remained visibly burdened by the events of the morning. Each step he took seemed measured, hesitant, as though he feared the shadows themselves might conspire to entrap him.
Watson, observe how fear alters the gait and posture of even the most composed individuals. Overton walks with a subtle inward tension, shoulders slightly hunched, hands clasped near the chest. The body often betrays truths that words obscure. Note also the angle of his gaze. It flicks toward windows, doors, and passers-by, seeking hidden threats.
I mirrored his observations, aware that Holmes intended me to see beyond the superficial. Holmes, I ventured softly, do you suspect that his disappearance is part of a larger scheme rather than a simple act of coercion?
Precisely, Watson. The threads we have gathered thus far, an anonymous letter, a cryptic visitor, coded entries in a ledger, point toward a deliberate orchestration. The question is not merely why Overton was summoned, but who possesses the motive and the means to compel his compliance.
Once Overton was safely ensconced in his room, Holmes and I gathered around the small writing desk, the faint light from the window illuminating the carefully arranged objects. His gesture toward the ledger we had recovered from the warehouse.
The ledger, Watson, is more than record keeping. It is a cipher, a lattice of movements and intentions. By cross-referencing the entries with recent matches and club schedules, we may deduce which individuals had opportunity, motive, and knowledge sufficient to manipulate events. Observe the margins. Small notations, almost imperceptible, marking certain days.
Indeed, Holmes's eyes darted back and forth across the page, following lines and symbols with precision. Notice, Watson, he murmured, how the placement of each mark is deliberate. These are not idle scribbles, but instructions and warnings. Whoever authored this intends to influence actions without revealing identity. Nodding go cost now tag cost butting.
Now, Watson, let us consider those who benefit from Overton's absence. In rugby, timing and skill are everything. His sudden disappearance affects team performance, betting outcomes, and the reputations of those who might wish to manipulate the game. The simplest hypothesis, though not always correct, is that profit or prestige motivates action.
I pondered his words, recognizing the duality inherent in Holmes's logic. The missing player was at once a pawn in a larger game, and yet a man in genuine peril. Holmes, I said cautiously, should we consult the club captain? Or might direct confrontation reveal too much too soon?
We must always balance discretion with inquiry. Confronting the captain or any influential member requires preparation. Observe the psychology. Those who act under pressure reveal inconsistencies and betrayals through tone, gesture, and hesitation. We shall use subtlety first, and force, if necessary, only later.
The club captain, a stern man with a weathered face and an exacting posture, received us with a mixture of respect and mild wariness. Holmes introduced the situation delicately, careful not to alarm or provoke, while I maintained the supportive role, recording each reaction with keen attention.
Captain, we are investigating the sudden absence of Mr. Overton. I ask you to consider only the factual sequence of events as accurately as possible. Recount who was present, who departed, and any unusual communications you might have observed. Every detail, however small, could prove vital.
Very well, Mr. Holmes. I can say this much: Overton was to attend cleaning in the afternoon, but he did not return after receiving a message. There was a visitor, tall and distinguished, who spoke with him privately. The visitor left quickly, and I noticed Overton seemed agitated afterward. I assumed it was a personal matter.
Holmes noted the man's demeanor carefully, the tight grip on his notebook, the brief flicker of concern in his eyes, and the hesitation before answering certain questions. Observe, Watson, Holmes whispered, that even in composure, anxiety manifests in micro-expressions, a raised eyebrow, a tightened jaw, a momentary glance downward. All betray internal tension. Does not
Captain, do you know of anyone who might seek to benefit from Mr. Overton's absence? Financial, social, or competitive motives are all relevant. please consider carefully, as honesty is imperative.
I cannot say with certainty. There are always those who speculate on betting outcomes and rival teams that might gain advantage, but I'm unaware of direct threats. The young man's talent, however, is renowned, and I admit that some may see advantage in his unavailability.
Holmes's eyes lit with an intensity that made me shiver. Watson, notice how even the absence of evidence can be informative. The captain's careful language, his emphasis on speculation rather than observation, suggests he's either uninvolved or carefully distancing himself. Either scenario provides insight.
Watson, our next step is to reconstruct the route Mr. Overton likely took after leaving the club. By examining the streets, alleys, and points of contact, we may trace his movements and identify the individual who compelled him. Observation, patience, and inference shall guide us.
Set out immediately, Holmes leading the way with eyes scanning every corner, every puddle, and every footprint. The fog, though dense, did not hinder his remarkable perception. He noted subtle impressions on the cobblestones, faint traces of mud, and the way small droplets of rain had settled unevenly.
Note the direction of these droplets, Watson. They indicate haste and irregular movement. The heavier smudges align with Overton's shoes, while the finer residue suggests a secondary party, someone taller, perhaps wearing boots with a distinct tread.
I followed him closely, recording each observation and attempting to correlate patterns. Holmes paused at a narrow alley, crouching slightly as he inspected the wall. "Here, Watson," he said, tapping a faint mark upon the brick, the trace of a hand, lightly smeared, perhaps from a hasty grasp or support. "This is the signature of the one who intercepted Overton. Note its height and pressure. It reveals both physical stature and emotional urgency."
We must proceed carefully. There are more clues ahead, Watson. The individual responsible is cautious, yet not infallible. The faint trace of mud on the wall, combined with residue on the ledger and Overton's own footwear, indicates a sequence of contact. If we can follow it precisely, we shall confront the instigator with certainty.
Hours passed as we traced the young man's probable route, moving from alleyways to side streets, always alert for signs of concealment or misdirection. Holmes's meticulous attention revealed subtle signals I would have overlooked entirely: a displaced brick, a slightly scuffed doorstep, the echo of footsteps in an empty passage.
Watson, note that every obstacle encountered, every irregularity in surface or pattern, conveys information. The criminal mind, though cunning, invariably leaves traces. Observation allows us to reconstruct intention, action, and even character.
Eventually, we reached a quiet square where a single lamplight flickered against the fog. Holmes motioned for silence, crouched, and examined the ground. A small scrap of paper, nearly invisible beneath a puddle, bore an impression matching the folded note Overton had received.
Ah, Watson, here is confirmation. The note was indeed handled after delivery, perhaps as a test of obedience. The residue of mud, the slight tear at the corner, and the angle of the fold all suggest rapid handling. The individual we seek is careful, yet impatience betrays them in minute details.
As Holmes held the scrap delicately, I realized the adventure had entered a new phase, the pursuit of the manipulator behind Overton's disappearance. Every clue pointed towards someone with cunning, resources, and intimate knowledge of both the young man and the club. The fog seemed to thicken, not merely from weather, but as though London itself conspired to conceal the truth.
Watson, the final step will be confrontation. But first, we must ascertain identity and motive with certainty. The evidence is mounting, yet precision is paramount. Let us return to Baker Street, collate observations, and prepare for decisive action. The day's work has provided ample material, and tomorrow promises revelation.
That night, as Holmes arranged his notes and I transcribed each detail, the magnitude of our investigation became apparent. We were no longer merely tracing a missing athlete, we were unraveling a scheme of cunning design where every subtle act, every seemingly minor communication could alter the course of events. London, in its fog-laden quiet, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. The following morning broke with a muted grey, the fog lingering over the streets like a pale curtain. Holmes and I returned to Baker Street, the weight of the previous day's discoveries pressing upon us. Mr. Overton, though restored to his lodgings, remained anxious, pacing the room and occasionally glancing toward the window as if expecting an unseen pursuer.
Watson, observe how anticipation manifests in posture and mannerisms. Overton's movements are purposeful yet tense, a combination of vigilance and uncertainty. Such behavior reveals the mental strain imposed by coercion and secrecy. Every action is a statement, whether intentional or unconscious.
I nodded, attempting to internalize his lessons. Holmes, do you believe the individual behind this plot will attempt another maneuver, or have we delayed their plan sufficiently?
It is unwise to assume that intervention alone halts a careful design, Watson. The antagonist is methodical, calculating, and observant. They will likely wait, watching from shadows or using intermediaries to test responses. Our task is to anticipate their logic, not merely react.
Holmes's gaze wandered to the ledger spread across his desk. Each notation, symbol, and marginal remark seemed to pulse with hidden significance. We must identify the sender of the letter, Watson. Everything else hinges upon that single fact.
Indeed. Consider the patterns we have observed, the delivery method, the specific phrasing, the residual scent, and the subtle traces of mud. Collectively, they indicate someone with intimate knowledge of both the club and Mr. Overton's habits, and someone who can manipulate events without immediate detection.
Our first move was to revisit the athletic club. Holmes questioned staff and members with extraordinary precision, noting hesitation, inconsistencies, and subtle shifts in tone. I recorded each detail, aware that my understanding of deduction improved with each encounter.
Watson, pay attention to the manner in which they avoid direct eye contact, how they preface statements with disclaimers, and the speed of their speech. These indicators are often more revealing than the words themselves.
Mr. Holmes, I can only repeat what I observed yesterday. Overton received a visitor, tall and distinguished. He left abruptly afterward. I noticed nothing more, save for a faint impression of perfume lingering where he stood.
Observe, Watson. Repetition and emphasis are as informative as omission. The secretary's insistence on these details suggests he recognizes their significance, consciously or not. Note also the scent. It is not common and may lead to identification.
Holmes then directed our attention to the club's betting records and match schedules. Certain entries had been altered subtly, creating opportunities for interference. Watson, he said, see how the ledger's inconsistencies correlate with altered entries? The manipulator has intimate knowledge of timing and probabilities. They are orchestrating the outcome through both absence and confusion.
The objective is to trace advantage and motive. Who gains by Mr. Overton's absence and how? Examine the financial implications, social position, and competitive stakes. Each reveals potential culprits.
Our next lead came from a particularly shrewd young player who noted that an aristocratic figure had been seen near Overton's lodgings days before the disappearance. The description matched that given by the club secretary. Holmes's eyes gleamed as he connected the threads.
Watson, it is becoming clear. We are dealing with a man of wealth, accustomed to influence and subtlety, capable of moving unnoticed and directing others to achieve his ends. The physical evidence, the behavioral cues, and the ledger all converge toward one individual.
We returned to Baker Street to prepare our confrontation. Holmes meticulously arranged all observations, lining them against one another with mathematical precision. The scent, the letters, the footprints, and Overton's testimony created a lattice of proof that left little doubt.
Watson, we must act decisively yet discreetly. A direct accusation without absolute evidence may allow the antagonist to escape or manipulate perception further. We shall approach him in public, ensure that witnesses are present, and allow the evidence itself to speak.
Our plan led us to the private gallery where the aristocratic figure, a well-known patron of athletics, frequently observed matches. Holmes and I arrived under the guise of casual spectators, noting the man's posture, gait, and attention. Every movement was a message, every glance a potential revelation.
Observe, Watson. He positions himself to view the entrance, Yet his eyes constantly shift toward those entering and leaving. His composure is deliberate, yet micro expressions betray impatience and concern. He is expecting something or someone.
We approached him casually, engaging in polite conversation, while Holmes subtly probed, introducing references to Overton's disappearance and the unusual letter. The man maintained composure, yet there was a flicker of recognition, a micro twitch near the eye. Holmes seized upon it immediately.
Sir, you are aware, I presume, that Mr. Overton received correspondence demanding his presence and threatening consequences should he fail to comply. Your movements, observed and inferred, suggest intimate involvement. I must ask, were you indeed the author of such a missive?
Kurama, Mr. Holmes, this is an accusation most serious. I do not know what you mean. Surely you cannot presume to confront me based on mere conjecture.
Conjecture, sir, is for those untrained in deduction. We possess evidence, traces of the scent you leave, the timing of your appearances, the ledger with its coded alterations, and the witness observations linking you directly to Overton's summons. Your identity is revealed not by speculation, but by methodical analysis.
The man's face betrayed a subtle change. His composure faltered, just enough for Holmes to press. Observe, Watson, he whispered. That hesitation is confirmation. It is rarely possible to suppress entirely the physiological response to exposure. Note the quickened breath, the ever so slight shift in stance.
Sir, all deception aside, it is in your interest to speak freely. The young man's career, safety, and the integrity of the club are at stake. Truth is, your only recourse now.
Very well, Mr. Holmes, you have deduced with precision. I wish to ensure Mr. Overton's absence during certain matches. Sure, there are financial interests involved, and I acted in anticipation of advantage. Yet I never intended harm, merely leverage.
Holmes' expression softened imperceptibly, though his mind continued to calculate every implication. Leverage, he murmured, yet the method chosen reveals both risk and recklessness. The smallest miscalculation could have led to catastrophe.
Indeed, sir. The law and the principles of fair competition are not so easily circumvented. Your interference, though subtle, threatened both personal safety and public trust. Now, with your confession, we can ensure corrective measures and restore order.
As the confrontation concluded, Holmes gathered his notes and led Overton to safety. The aristocratic figure, now subdued by both exposure and acknowledgement of wrongdoing, could do little but await the consequences. London, it seemed, continued its rhythm, yet for those involved, the resolution was immediate, decisive, and unmistakably thorough.
Watson, note this. Justice is rarely a matter of vengeance. It is the restoration of balance achieved through clarity, observation, and reasoned action. Today, we have succeeded not merely because of force, but because the facts themselves revealed the truth.
Formsing. That evening, as the fog lifted slightly over Baker Street, I reflected on the intricate interplay of evidence, observation, and human behavior that had brought the mystery to light. Holmes, ever the consummate detective, reclined with the air of one who had performed a symphony of logic and insight. Hey,
Watson, tomorrow brings closure and reflection, but tonight we may rest, confident that reason and careful attention have triumphed over deception and manipulation. The city sleeps, oblivious to the revelations quietly unfolding within its heart.
the morning light filtered weakly through the fog. As Holmes and I returned to Baker Street, the city still cloaked in a pall of grey. Despite the resolution of the confrontation with the aristocratic instigator, a sense of lingering tension remained. Mr. Overton, now safe but visibly shaken, accompanied us, his steps hesitant yet steadier than in the preceding days.
Watson, observe how relief manifests in posture and motion. Overton walks with less inward tension, yet vigilance lingers in his gaze. The mind, once subjected to coercion, retains traces of anxiety long after the immediate threat has passed. Such psychological residue is an important element in understanding human behavior.
I noted the subtle changes, marveling at Holmes' capacity to discern the imperceptible. Holmes, how does one restore balance to a mind so troubled even after danger has been averted? I asked, genuinely curious and concerned.
Watson, the restoration of balance is a gradual process. The mind requires reassurance, consistency, and the removal of lingering uncertainty. Overton must now regain his routine, his sense of control, and the confidence to trust his own judgment. Observation of his recovery will also yield insights into resilience and character.
Once we had returned to Baker Street, Holmes set about compiling a comprehensive record of the case. Every observation, every trace, every interaction was carefully catalogued, forming a coherent narrative that linked motive, action, and consequence. I assisted in transcribing, noting how each thread of evidence interwove seamlessly into the fabric of deduction.
Watson, consider this. The essential principle in any investigation is that evidence, because properly interpreted, narrates the story without embellishment. The facts themselves are sufficient. The mind merely deciphers their language. Observe how each small detail, the mud, the scent, the ledger's marginalia, contributes to a chain of causation.
Overton, seated quietly in the corner, the in-law watched Holmes work with an expression oscillating between admiration and awe. Holmes, he finally spoke, voice tentative. I cannot adequately express my gratitude. I've saved not merely my career, but perhaps my reputation and safety.
Your gratitude, while appreciated, is secondary to the principle of observation, Mr. Overton. The preservation of order, fairness, and justice is the duty of reason applied diligently. Yet, let it suffice that your restoration to security is the immediate outcome.
Holmes's attention shifted briefly to me. Watson, note how acknowledgement of duty and the visible relief in the subject's demeanor confirm the efficacy of correct deduction. The moral and emotional resolution is as integral as the logical conclusion.
Furthermore, Watson, this case illustrates the subtlety with which influence and coercion operate. An aristocratic manipulator, accustomed to discretion and leverage, may accomplish his ends without direct confrontation. Hence, the necessity of vigilance and thorough observation.
We discussed the implications of the case over tea, quiet clinking of cups, a gentle counterpoint to the city's muted bustle outside. Holmes recounted the sequence of events, noting each moment of significance, the anonymous letter, the cryptic visitor, the ledger entries, and the final identification of the manipulator.
Each element, Watson, demonstrates the principle that the smallest act can have significant consequences. Even an ostensibly trivial gesture, folding a letter, leaving a footprint, can reveal intentions and unravel deception. The discipline of observation is, therefore, not merely academic, but practical, and often vital.
Overton, recovering from his ordeal, spoke again, his voice more assured. Mr. Holmes, I now understand that even ordinary events, footsteps, letters, casual encounters, may conceal profound consequences. I shall endeavor to be more vigilant in the future.
Indeed, Mr. Overton, awareness is the first safeguard. Observation, coupled with reasoning, provides a foundation upon which decisions can be soundly based. The world leaves clues everywhere. The task is to discern them before misfortune strikes.
That afternoon, we paid a visit to the club where the consequences of our discovery were becoming apparent. The aristocratic manipulator, though respected publicly, faced scrutiny and censure. The club captain, once uncertain and wary, now expressed relief and gratitude for the clarity Holmes had provided.
Watson, note the dynamics of authority and influence here. Even those accustomed to power are constrained by rules and evidence. Exposure of misconduct restores equilibrium, both morally and institutionally. The restoration of balance is a natural outcome of rigorous observation and deduction.
Holmes lingered, conversing quietly with the captain, advising measures to prevent recurrence of such interference. I observed, noting the captain's careful nods and attentive posture, signs of comprehension and respect. Holmes's influence, subtle yet unmistakable, shaped not merely outcomes but behavior.
The prevention of future wrongdoing, Watson, is as important as the resolution of past transgressions. Systems of order and accountability rely on vigilance, foresight, and the consistent application of reason. Without these, even trivial actions may escalate into significant disruptions.
By evening, Baker Street had settled into quietude. The fog outside had lifted slightly, leaving the city in a softened glow. Holmes, reclining in his chair, fingers steepled, gazed into the distance as if pondering yet another intricate puzzle that might await in the labyrinth of London streets.
Watson, reflect upon this case. Observation, deduction, and careful reasoning are inseparable from human experience. We have seen fear, coercion, and manipulation, yet reason has prevailed. Let this serve as both lesson and reminder that the ordinary often conceals the extraordinary. At Goo!
I recorded each word, each reflection, aware that the lessons of the case extended beyond Mr. Overton's disappearance. Holmes had demonstrated once more the supremacy of disciplined thought, the importance of meticulous attention, and the necessity of patience in uncovering truth.
Watson, the city sleeps tonight, yet countless mysteries stir unseen. Our task is never finished. The ordinary conceals the extraordinary, and the ordinary man remains unaware of the threads weaving around him. Observation and reasoning are our only lights in such darkness.
As I extinguished my candle and prepared for rest, I reflected on the journey we had undertaken. From the first murmur of a missing letter to the final confrontation and resolution, Holmes's unwavering commitment to deduction had guided us. The world, in all its complexity, could indeed be deciphered through patience, observation, and the relentless pursuit of truth.
Hmm? Rest, Watson. But remember, every shadow in London conceals the possibility, every footprint whispers a story, and every letter, however insignificant it may seem, can change the course of events. Our duty is to perceive, interpret, and act. All else is merely circumstance.
That night? As the lamplight flickered across our rooms and the quiet hum of the city settled into distant memory, I knew that I had once more witnessed the extraordinary workings of Sherlock Holmes. Logic, observation, and relentless reasoning had restored order to chaos, and in doing so, revealed the enduring power of deduction to illuminate even the most intricate human intrigue.